The alien princess chose me, and the galaxy wasn't ready. Alex Bennett had always found solace in the hum of his workshop. It was a modest place, filled with rusted tools, spare parts, and half-finished repairs. He was a mechanic, working on Earth's aging satellites and space equipment. But beneath his calm, mechanical life, there was always an unspoken desire for something more. Alex was fascinated by the stars and the possibility of adventure, even though he had never expected to leave Earth. One rainy afternoon, Alex was working on a routine repair job when something unusual happened. The satellite he was tasked to repair had received an encrypted distress signal. It was faint, barely perceptible, but Alex's curiosity got the better of him. He traced the signal to a remote part of the planet's outskirts. It didn't take long for him to find the source, a strange, metallic object in the shape of a ship lying in the dense forest near his small workshop. His heart raced with excitement. Could it be from another planet? It wasn't the first time someone had claimed to see UFOs, but this was different. This was real. As he cautiously approached the wreckage, he was surprised to find the ship intact, though severely damaged. But what really caught his attention was the figure lying next to it. A woman, she was unlike anyone Alex had ever seen. Tall, regal, with silver-blue skin and striking violet eyes that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. Her long hair, like a cascade of stars, glowed faintly as it moved with the breeze. Despite her otherworldly appearance, she was clearly in distress, her breathing shallow, her body battered from the crash. Alex's heart pounded as he rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" he asked, though he knew it was a foolish question. She looked at him with confusion, her eyes scanning him as if unsure whether to trust him. "I am Lyra," she whispered, her voice weak but filled with an air of authority. "I am Princess of the Ascarian Empire." The words took a moment to sink in. Princess, Ascarian Empire. Alex had heard of alien civilizations before, but nothing quite like this. He didn't have time to process everything. He was too focused on helping her. He carefully lifted her into his arms and brought her back to his workshop. Once inside, Alex worked quickly, using what little medical knowledge he had to stabilize her. His heart raced as he tried to keep his cool. The woman who had crashed into his life was no ordinary person. She was an alien princess. The weight of that thought settled heavily on his shoulders, but it was quickly overshadowed by the urgency of the situation. Lyra's condition slowly improved, but she remained unconscious for hours. During that time, Alex couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. An alien princess? What was she doing here? And why had her ship crashed on Earth? When Lyra finally woke, her violet eyes fluttered open, and she gazed at Alex with a mixture of wariness and gratitude. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice stronger now, though still laced with exhaustion. "You're safe," Alex replied. "You crashed. I brought you here to help." She took a deep breath and slowly sat up, wincing at the pain from her injuries. "I did not expect to crash," she said, her gaze shifting to the small room. "You are human, but how did you find me?" Alex wasn't sure how to answer that. "I'm a mechanic," he said simply. "I fix things, I saw the ship, and I came to help." Lyra studied him for a long moment, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. There was something about her presence that commanded respect, even in her weakened state. She was a leader, and Alex could sense that. "I owe you my life," she said, her voice filled with a quiet strength. "But I cannot stay here for long. I have a mission." "A mission?" Alex asked, now even more intrigued. "What kind of mission?" Lyra hesitated, as though weighing whether to trust him with the truth. Finally, she spoke. "My people, the Ascarian Empire, are in turmoil. I was sent to Earth to find an ally, a human, someone who could help me claim the throne." Alex blinked, confused. "Claim the throne, but why me?" Lyra's gaze softened, and for the first time, Alex saw a glimmer of something personal behind her regal exterior. "Because your kind has something that others do not. You have resilience. Your species survives against all odds. You have the strength to fight for what is right." Alex didn't know what to say. He was just a mechanic, an ordinary person. Why would someone like her choose him for such an important task? Before he could respond, Lyra winced, her hand going to her side where a bruise from the crash still throbbed. "I need to get back to my ship. My enemies will be looking for me." Alex stood, determination flashing in his eyes. "I'll help you," he said. "I don't know what's going on, but I can't let you go out there alone. We'll fix your ship and we'll figure this out." For a moment, Lyra regarded him in silence, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded. You are a curious human, Alex Bennett. I chose you because you are not afraid to act even when the odds are against you. That statement sent a jolt through Alex's chest. He wasn't afraid, but that didn't mean he wasn't unsure. He had no idea what he was getting into. But deep down, something inside him stirred, a sense of purpose that he had never felt before. The next few hours were a blur of activity as Alex worked to repair Lyra's ship. He had never worked on anything this advanced, but with Lyra's guidance, he managed to get the ship into a semblance of working order. As they worked side by side, they began to form an unspoken bond. She wasn't just a princess, she was a person, a warrior, a leader who had seen the galaxy in ways Alex could never imagine. As the repairs finished, Lyra turned to Alex, her gaze unwavering. "Thank you for your help. You will come with me now to the stars. You will be my ally, my protector, and together we will change the course of the galaxy." Alex stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He had never asked for any of this, but somehow he knew this was the beginning of something greater than anything he had ever imagined. The galaxy wasn't ready for the storm that was about to come, but Alex Bennett and Princess Lyra were ready to face it together. Alex sat in the cockpit of the ship, hands trembling as he worked the controls. His mind was racing, trying to comprehend everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. One moment, he was an ordinary mechanic, working on old satellites, and the next, he found himself in the heart of an alien princess's mission to claim a throne in a galaxy far beyond Earth. How had he gotten here? Lyra sat beside him, her presence calming but filled with an energy that was impossible to ignore. The way she carried herself, even with the exhaustion of the crash still weighing on her, made her seem more than human. Alex had never met anyone like her, so powerful yet so vulnerable at the same time. As they prepared to leave Earth, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. The ship hummed to life, its alien technology whirring with a gentle power. Alex's fingers danced across the unfamiliar console, following Lyra's instructions. Despite his confusion, he could tell she trusted him, even though he had no idea what he was doing. Every time he glanced at her, her violet eyes seemed to hold a depth of experience that made him feel small, as if he were standing at the edge of a vast, unknown universe. "We're ready," Alex said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his chest. Lyra gave him a brief smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "We have a long journey ahead, Alex, but together we can accomplish what many thought impossible." With that, the ship shot forward into the atmosphere, leaving Earth behind. Alex watched through the windows as the planet he had always known shrank into the distance. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. He was leaving everything he knew, stepping into the unknown. But as the stars stretched out before him, something deep within him told him this was where he was meant to be. Hours passed in silence, the only sounds the hum of the ship's engines and the occasional instructions from Lyra as they navigated through deep space. Alex focused on the controls, trying to ignore the overwhelming thoughts racing through his mind. Every so often, Lyra would glance at him, her gaze unreadable, and Alex couldn't help but wonder what was going on in her mind. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. "I must explain more to you about the Ascarian Empire, Alex. It's important for you to understand what you're stepping into." Alex nodded, his curiosity piqued. He had so many questions, but he wasn't sure where to start. "I don't even know where to begin. Why did you choose me?" "What do I have to do with your empire?" Lyra's expression softened slightly, her eyes distant as she gazed out the window at the swirling stars. "The Ascarian Empire is vast, spanning countless star systems. It is one of the oldest and most powerful in the galaxy. But for all its power, it is on the brink of destruction. Civil war has torn us apart. Different factions vie for control of the throne, each with their own vision of what the empire should be. My father, the former emperor, was killed in a coup. My brother, the crown prince, is a ruthless leader who will stop at nothing to claim the throne. And my mother—" her voice trailed off, as if the weight of the words was too much to bear. Alex could see the pain in her eyes. "And you want to take the throne from your brother?" he asked, trying to understand. Lyra nodded, her jaw tightening. "Yes, but it's not just about power, it's about restoring balance to our empire. Under my brother's rule, the empire has become a war machine, consuming everything in its path. The people suffer and the galaxy trembles in fear. I want to bring peace. But to do that, I need an ally, someone from outside the empire." Someone who isn't bound by our traditions and politics. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he absorbed her words. This wasn't just a fight for a throne, it was a battle for the future of an entire galaxy, and Lyra had chosen him to help her. But why me? Alex asked again, still struggling to understand. I'm just a mechanic. I don't know anything about war or politics. Lyra's gaze turned to him, and for the first time there was a flicker of something softer in her eyes. That's exactly why I need you. Your kind humans have something we do not. You survive in ways that others cannot understand. You have an unwavering spirit. You are willing to fight for what's right, no matter the odds. The Ascarian Empire needs that. It needs fresh blood, a new way of thinking, and someone who can help unite the galaxy. Alex was silent for a long moment, taking in everything she had said. He had always believed that humans were nothing special, just a small, insignificant species in the grand scheme of the universe. But now, hearing Lyra's words, he realized how wrong he had been. Humanity had something that the rest of the galaxy needed, something that made them unique, and for better or worse, he had been chosen to help lead the charge. As the days passed, Alex and Lyra spent their time on the ship, preparing for what lay ahead. They trained together, though it was clear that Lyra was far more skilled than he was in almost every way. She taught him the ways of the Ascarian Empire, how to navigate the intricacies of intergalactic politics, and how to defend himself in battle. Alex had never been a fighter, but Lyra's relentless training began to shape him into someone capable of standing by her side. Through it all, their bond grew. At first, it had been out of necessity. Alex was her ally, and she was his guide. But as they worked together, something more began to form between them. They started to understand each other in ways that went beyond words. There were moments, fleeting but powerful, when they would share a look that spoke volumes. In those moments, Alex could feel the weight of the universe shifting, and he knew that he wasn't just helping Lyra, he was part of something much bigger. One night, as they sat together in the quiet of the ship, Lyra turned to him, her voice low. "There is much at stake, Alex. I don't know what will happen once we reach the heart of the Empire. My brother's forces are powerful, and they will stop at nothing to see me fall. But I need you to know this, I trust you, and that trust means everything." Alex felt his heart swell with a mix of emotions. Trust, he never thought he would hear those words from someone like Lyra. The weight of her trust, the responsibility it carried, made him realize just how much was riding on their success. He wasn't just fighting for an empire, he was fighting for her, for the galaxy, and for a future he had never imagined. "I won't let you down," Alex promised, his voice filled with a quiet determination that surprised even him. Lyra gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I know you won't." The stars stretched out before them like endless diamonds, but Alex couldn't ignore the knot in his stomach. The further they traveled from Earth, the heavier the weight on his shoulders became. He had never imagined he'd be part of something so important. He was just a mechanic, yet now he was caught up in a galactic struggle, standing at the side of an alien princess with the fate of an empire hanging in the balance. Lyra was at the helm of the ship, her focus sharp as she piloted them through a vast expanse of space. The silent hum of the engines filled the cockpit, but Alex couldn't help but glance at her every now and then. Her strength was undeniable, but there was also a sadness that lingered behind her violet eyes, a burden she carried alone. "We're approaching the outer rim of the Ascarian Empire," Lyra said, breaking the silence. "The next few days will be critical. My brother's forces are close and they won't hesitate to strike." Alex nodded, his grip tightening on the armrest. "What can we do?" "How do we stand a chance?" Lyra turned to him, her gaze steady. "We fight, but not just with force. We need to gather allies, Alex. The Empire is divided, and there are factions that may support my claim to the throne, but we must act quickly." The words hung in the air, heavy with the realization of just how monumental this journey was. It wasn't just about a fight for power. It was a fight for the future of an entire galaxy. And Alex was in the center of it all, unsure of what his role would ultimately be. As the ship traveled deeper into Ascarian territory, they stopped at several planets, each one offering new challenges and opportunities. Lyra's reputation preceded her, and though many of the alien leaders they met were wary of her return, Alex could see the respect they had for her. But it wasn't enough to sway them all. Some were loyal to her brother, Prince Kalen, who ruled with fear and oppression. The first time they encountered one of Kalen's supporters, it was on a planet called Orcs. The planet was home to a fiercely independent group of warriors known as the Vulgaris, and their leader, Commander Reek, was a formidable presence. Alex had heard of him. Reek had a reputation for being both ruthless and honorable, depending on who you asked. The meeting was tense. Lyra stood before Reek, her posture regal, but Alex could see the wariness in her eyes. She had faced many challenges in her life, but convincing Reek to support her cause was not going to be easy. "I've heard of you, Princess Lyra," Reek said, his voice low and gravelly. "But I've also heard of your brother. He's a man of power, and he commands a fleet that could crush us all." Lyra didn't flinch. "Your loyalty to him is misguided, Reek. He will burn the Empire to the ground if given the chance. I seek to restore balance, not domination. Join me, and together we can bring peace." Reek studied her for a long moment, his sharp eyes narrowing. "Peace? Your empire has known nothing but war for centuries. What makes you think you can change that?" "Because I'm not like him," Lyra replied, her voice unwavering. "I understand the price of war, and I will not make the same mistakes." For a moment, it seemed as if Reek was about to refuse, but then something shifted in his expression. "You've got fire, Princess," he said finally. "Maybe I'll give you a chance. But you'll need more than words to win the Empire. I'll fight with you, but only if you prove you can survive what's coming." Lyra nodded. "I don't need to prove anything, but I will fight, and I will win." Alex stood by, watching as the two leaders made their uneasy alliance. Reek was no fool, and his approval of Lyra was a sign that things were shifting in her favor. But Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much more dangerous. As they continued their journey, they encountered more planets, each one offering a new challenge. Some leaders refused to back Lyra, loyal only to her brother, while others were swayed by her vision of a better empire. But it wasn't easy. Every step forward felt like a victory, but each victory came with a cost. The deeper they got into Ascarian space, the more dangerous it became. One night, as the ship sailed through the blackness of space, Alex couldn't sleep. He wandered to the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. The vastness of it all overwhelmed him. He was part of a fight he barely understood, yet somehow he couldn't walk away. He wasn't sure when Lyra joined him, but when she did, she stood beside him in silence, both of them staring out into the endless night. Her presence was calming, but Alex could sense the weight she carried, the responsibility she felt for an entire empire. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" Alex asked softly. Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting the stars. "Every day," she said quietly. "But I cannot let doubt stop me. I was born for this. I have to believe in what I'm doing, or everything will be lost." Alex nodded. He understood that. There was no room for hesitation, no space for fear. They were in this together, and whatever came next, they would face it head-on. The next day, the news came that changed everything. A fleet of ships, led by Prince Kalen, had been spotted on a nearby planet, ready to move against them. It was no longer a matter of convincing allies. It was time for war. Lyra gathered her forces, and Alex stood by her side as they prepared for the coming battle. The Vulgaris warriors, led by Reek, were ready to fight, but it was clear that they would need more support. Lyra sent out calls for reinforcements, knowing that time was running out. The tension in the air was palpable as they readied their forces. Alex found himself at the center of it all, unsure of what role he would play in the coming conflict. He was no soldier, but Lyra trusted him, and that trust gave him the courage to stand beside her. As the battle drew closer, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. He had no idea what would happen, but one thing was clear. This was no longer just about a throne. It was about the future of the entire galaxy. The fight for the Ascarian Empire had begun, and Alex was no longer just a mechanic. He was a part of something much greater, and he had no idea how far it would take him. The ship's engines hummed softly as it glided through the vast emptiness of space. Lyra sat at the helm, her eyes focused on the distant stars, calculating their trajectory with a precision that Alex could only admire. He stood nearby, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, watching the holographic map of their journey unfold before him. The closer they got to Kalen's forces, the heavier the tension became. Alex had known this was coming, but now that it was finally here, it felt different. This wasn't just a fight for a throne. It was a battle for the future of the Ascarian Empire, and for the first time, Alex realized how deep the stakes truly were. Lyra turned to him, her expression unreadable, though there was a hardness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Are you ready for what comes next?" she asked quietly, her voice steady but filled with an underlying tension. Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "I don't know if I'm ready," he said honestly, "but I'll fight with you. You've already shown me that there's more to this than just power." Lyra's gaze softened for a moment, but only for a moment. "We don't have the luxury of doubt, Alex. The galaxy doesn't wait for us to be ready. We make our own fate, and we do it together." He nodded, knowing that she was right. This wasn't just about being ready. It was about stepping up and taking action when the world, or in this case, the galaxy, needed it most. The plan was set. Lyra's forces had gathered on a barren planet called Rithos, located just on the edge of Kalen's territory. Reek and his Vulgaris warriors would lead the charge, supported by a mix of rebel forces who had pledged loyalty to Lyra's cause. The hope was simple: strike first, hit hard, and take control of key positions before Kalen's fleet could mobilize. But nothing in war was ever simple. The day before the battle, Alex spent time with the troops, walking among the fighters as they prepared for what was to come. The Vulgaris warriors were tough and disciplined, their faces set in determination. Alex couldn't help but admire their strength, even as he felt out of place among them. He was a mechanic, not a soldier. What was his role in all of this? He still didn't fully understand, but as he watched Lyra speak with her generals, a sense of clarity began to settle in his mind. This was more than just a fight for power. It was a fight for survival. Lyra was no longer just the princess of a fallen empire. She was the hope of countless worlds, the one who could lead them all out of the darkness. And he was with her, whether he was ready or not. As night fell over Rithos, the air grew cold, and the sound of distant engines rumbled in the distance. Alex couldn't sleep. He stood by the ship's window, staring out at the vast expanse of space. The stars were endless, and for a moment he allowed himself to feel small, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. He had no idea what the next day would bring, but as he stood there, lost in thought, he heard footsteps behind him. Lyra. She stood beside him, her presence both comforting and intimidating. "Are you prepared?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. Alex turned to face her. "I'm not sure anyone ever really feels prepared for something like this," he replied, "but I'll do my best." "You are more than just your skills, Alex," Lyra said, her eyes meeting his. "Your heart, your spirit, those are the things that will carry us through. I've seen it in you." Her words hit harder than any weapon could. He had never considered himself special, never thought he could be the one to change anything. But Lyra believed in him, and in that moment, for the first time, Alex believed in himself, too. "I won't let you down," Alex said, his voice filled with newfound conviction. "I know," she whispered. The next morning, the battle began. The sound of engines roared as Lyra's fleet took off, heading towards Rithos' surface, where Kalen's forces were already mobilizing. Alex stood beside Lyra, his nerves on edge but his resolve stronger than ever. They had prepared as much as they could, but war was unpredictable. Anything could happen. Reek's warriors led the charge, charging across the dusty plains of Rithos, their weapons drawn and ready. Lyra's fleet followed closely behind, and Alex was thrust into the thick of it, his heart pounding in his chest. The first clash was brutal. Explosions shook the ground beneath them as laser fire lit up the sky. Alex fought alongside Lyra's forces, though he had no experience in combat. He had learned quickly, picking up the basics, but this was different. This wasn't just training. This was real. Lives were on the line. Despite the chaos, Alex found himself focusing on one thing: Lyra. She moved with a grace and precision that was almost otherworldly. She was a warrior, a leader, and Alex was determined to protect her, even if it meant risking everything. As the battle raged on, it became clear that Kalen's forces were not as organized as they had seemed. Lyra's forces gained ground quickly, pushing them back. The battle was fierce, but every victory came with a cost. The Vulgaris warriors fought valiantly, their cries of battle echoing across the plains. Reek fought with the same intensity, his massive sword cleaving through the enemy ranks. But even with all their strength, the fighting seemed endless. Alex's mind raced as he fought, trying to keep up with the chaos around him. He had always been good with machines, but now his focus had to be on survival. He didn't have time to think about what he didn't know. He had to fight, had to help in any way he could. The sound of a blast shattered his concentration. He turned to see Lyra, surrounded by a group of enemy soldiers. Without thinking, Alex charged toward her, his heart pounding in his chest. He fought with everything he had, swinging his weapon wildly, trying to clear the path for her. Lyra looked at him, her expression grateful but focused. "Stay close," she shouted over the noise of the battle. With a final push, they managed to break through the enemy line, but the cost was steep. Lyra's forces had suffered losses, and Alex could see the weight of it in her eyes. They had won the day, but the battle was far from over. As the dust began to settle, the surviving soldiers gathered around Lyra, their faces weary but proud. Alex stood beside her, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he took in the aftermath. They had done it. They had held their ground. But even as victory seemed within their grasp, Alex knew that this was only the beginning. Kalen would not let this defeat stand. The fight for the Iscarian Empire was far from over. Lyra turned to him, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his heart race. "We've won today, but the real battle is just beginning. Are you ready for what comes next?" Alex met her gaze, feeling the weight of everything that lay ahead. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady, his resolve unshaken. Together they had faced the first challenge, but the galaxy was still watching. And whatever happened next, Alex knew one thing for certain. There was no turning back. As the smoke cleared on the battlefield of Rithos, the ground was littered with the remnants of war. Lyra's forces had won, but the victory came with a heavy cost. The battlefield was quiet now, save for the distant hum of ships and the occasional cry of a soldier recovering from the chaos. Alex stood among the survivors, his body aching, his mind still racing from the horrors of the fight. He looked over at Lyra, who was speaking with Reek, her posture still commanding despite the weariness in her eyes. She had been through so much, yet there was something about her that never seemed to break. She had been the princess of a great empire, but now she was something more. She was a symbol of hope for the galaxy, someone who could bring peace to a fractured and war-torn world. And Alex? He was her ally, her protector, and now he realized her equal. As they gathered their forces, Lyra's gaze met Alex's, and for a brief moment, there was a softening in her eyes that he hadn't seen before. He was no longer just a human mechanic thrown into the midst of a galactic conflict. He had become an integral part of her fight. It was a bond forged in battle, a bond that neither of them could ignore. "Reek has agreed to send more warriors to our cause," Lyra said as she approached Alex, her voice steady despite the exhaustion evident on her face. "We'll need them as we continue forward. Kalen won't let this defeat go unanswered." Alex nodded, his fingers tightening around the weapon he had used in the fight. He had never imagined himself in the middle of something like this, but now that he was here, he couldn't back down. There was no turning back now. "You're sure about this?" Alex asked, his voice low. "This won't be the end of it, will it?" Lyra's eyes softened, and for the first time Alex saw the weight of her role, the responsibility she carried as the rightful ruler of the Iscarian Empire. She had made a promise to herself, to her people, and to the galaxy that she would not allow Kalen's tyranny to continue. But Alex knew that the battle was not just for the throne. It was for the future of countless lives. "No, it won't be the end," she said, her voice firm but quiet. "This is just the first step. We've made a mark, but Kalen won't give up easily. He'll strike back. We have to be ready." "I'm with you," Alex said without hesitation. "I won't let you do this alone." Lyra smiled, a rare, genuine smile that reached her eyes, even as they burned with the determination that had driven her this far. "I know you won't." As they prepared to leave Rithos and head deeper into enemy territory, the stakes grew even higher. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Kalen's forces would soon regroup, and they would come for Lyra and her supporters with everything they had. Their journey took them to another planet, one that was home to an ancient alien race known as the Zalaris. The Zalaris were known for their intelligence and mastery of technology, and they had long been neutral in the conflict between Lyra and Kalen. But Lyra needed their support if she was to have any hope of defeating her brother once and for all. The Zalaris had been cautious about offering their help, but after seeing Lyra's resolve and the strength of her army, they had agreed to meet with her. The negotiations were delicate. The Zalaris were not easily swayed, and their support could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. But convincing them would take more than just promises. Lyra knew that she had to prove herself, not just to the Zalaris, but to herself as well. As the delegation gathered on the surface of the Zalaris homeworld, the atmosphere was tense. The Zalaris were a tall, elegant species, their blue skin and glowing eyes radiating an otherworldly presence. Their leaders stood before Lyra, their expressions unreadable. "We have watched your rise with interest, Princess Lyra," the leader of the Zalaris, a tall woman named Thara, said. "But we do not make decisions lightly. You seek our support, but we need to know that you are worthy of it. The Iscarian Empire has known nothing but war for centuries. What will you do to change that?" Lyra stood tall, her posture unwavering. "I will end the cycle of violence. I will bring peace not through power but through unity. I will restore the empire to what it was meant to be, something that serves the people, not the few." Thara studied Lyra for a long moment, and Alex could see the skepticism in her eyes. The Zalaris had seen empires rise and fall, and they knew better than anyone the cost of ambition. "You speak of peace," Thara said, her voice soft but firm. "But can you deliver it? Can you unite a galaxy that has been torn apart by centuries of war?" Lyra didn't flinch. "I believe I can," she said, "but I can't do it alone. I need your help, and together we can create something better." The Zalaris leader nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing as she considered Lyra's words. After what seemed like an eternity, Thara finally spoke. "Very well, Princess, we will offer you our support. But remember this, peace comes at a cost. You must be willing to pay it." Lyra bowed her head in gratitude. "I will." With the Zalaris on their side, Lyra's position grew stronger, but it wasn't enough to secure a final victory. As they continued their march towards Kalen's stronghold, they encountered more obstacles, more challenges. Kalen's forces were relentless, and the war seemed to stretch on forever. But with each battle, Lyra and Alex grew closer. Their bond was no longer just that of allies. It was something deeper, something unspoken but undeniable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of fighting, they reached Kalen's capital. The final showdown was upon them. Lyra stood at the head of her army, her face calm but determined. Alex stood by her side, knowing that this would be the moment that would decide everything. "This is it," Lyra said, her voice steady but filled with the weight of everything that had led them here. "No more running, no more hiding. We fight and we win, for the galaxy." Alex nodded, his hand on the weapon at his side. "I'm with you. Let's end this." The battle that followed was nothing short of a storm. The clash between Lyra's forces and Kalen's army was fierce, but this time there was no uncertainty. This time they fought with everything they had because they knew it was their last chance. In the end, Lyra stood victorious. Kalen was defeated, his reign of terror ended. The galaxy, once divided and broken, began to heal. It wouldn't happen overnight, but the foundation for peace had been laid. Lyra had fulfilled her promise, and Alex had played a key role in it. As they stood together looking out at the stars, Lyra turned to Alex, a small smile on her face. "We did it," she said softly. Alex looked at her, his heart filled with pride and relief. "Yeah, we did."